Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Rajni Gaur, and today I'm going to deliver a content on the topic Principles of Communication and Barriers to Effective Communication. These topics are from the subject Language Across the Curriculum. As we know, it is a social process and it is the intact part of our life. Without communication, one cannot survive in the society and cannot establish relationship with others. So let's proceed towards our topic, Principles of Communication. There are 6 principles of communication which are as follows. The first principle is Principle of 7 C's. It includes 7 components which are very essential for effective communication. First is clarity. Message should be clear, and that can be brought through knowledge of the message, the method of conveying, and the medium of sending message. Next is completeness. The message should be self-sufficient. Each message must have a clear and logical conclusion. The conclusion gives an indication that there is no more to come. So, it is very essential that message should be complete in itself. Next is consistency. It must have consistency in tone, voice, and content. The continuous change in tone or voice may confuse receivers and there may be a miscommunication. Next is conductive environment. Environment should be very conducive and it should help to promote communication in a proper manner. It should be free from intervening variables like noise, disturbance, ambiguity, poor communication and pronunciation, etc. Next is conciseness. Convey your message precisely. It should be time-saving, cost-effective, underlines the message, etc. Unnecessarily elaborated message may create confusion or mislead the receiver. Next is courtesy. The message should show the expression of respect for a receiver through the words like sincere, polite, judicious, reflective, enthusiastic, etc. Next is concreteness. The communication should be specific, definite, and vivid rather than vague and figure. Concrete communication implies being particular and clear, supported with the facts and figures. Our second principle is Principle of Mastery over Language. Effectiveness of communication depends on mastery over language or language skills of an individual. The language used by sender should be easy and appropriate so that receiver may understand it well. Third is Principle of Motivation. Motivation level affects the effectiveness of communication. If it is less than communication, is less effective or vice versa. The motivation of sender help him in proper encoding and motivation in receivers help him in catching the message properly. Our fourth principle is Principle of Appropriate Feedback. Appropriate feedback works wonder as it paves the way for improvement, and always there is a scope for improvisation if we does something. Appropriate feedback not only boosts the moral of the sender but also the understanding of the receiver. Our fifth principle is principle of appropriate gesture. This principle of appropriate gesture is also very important. Verbal and non-verbal communication should use proper gesture for effective communication. The use of appropriate gesture makes communication more effective when it comes to verbal communication and as well as non-verbal communication. Next is principle of proper attitude. Every person possesses attitude that may be positive and negative, but positivity in attitude definitely affects the communication process. Positive attitude promotes effective communication. If attitude is inappropriate, then it may cause misunderstanding or confusion. These are the 6 principles of communication, and one has to know about these principles to make its communication process more effective. And moreover, being a teacher, it is very essential that communication should be free from any kind of biasness. It should be free from any kind of insecurities, so it enhances the effectiveness of communication in the classroom and students understand well. Now we proceed to our another topic is barriers to effective communication. There are number of barriers which affect the communication process, and these barriers are: first is lack of planning on the part of sender and receiver. It is very essential that if we want to communicate something, we need to do planning beforehand on the part of sender as well as on the part of receiver. If we plan the communication process, definitely its effectiveness enhances. The use of jargon. What are jargons? These are the special or the technical words used by a group of people in a particular profession and not used or understood by other people. Example, in business, businessmen used a term, bang for the buck. It means to get the most of your money, but it is the term used by the businessmen, general people. If we use such type of vocabulary, definitely it creates problem for others to understand as it is not general. Third one is lack of attention and interest. For example, our teacher is communicating something in class, and if we are not attentive and we are not taking interest in listening to her, definitely we do not understand whatever is communicated by the teacher to us. So it is very essential that one should pay attention and should show their keen interest in learning or listening. Differences in perception and viewpoints. Everybody has their own viewpoint and their own way of perceiving the things. If we are having positive outlook towards the communication, then we can understand it in a proper manner. But definitely if we do not look at the situation according to the viewpoint of the others, try to understand the viewpoint of others, then we have differences in our opinions. Next barrier is physical disabilities. if a person is not feeling well or is in an uncomfortable situation due to their physical disabilities, maybe the person is deaf, maybe person is hard hearing, dumb, or any other kind of physical disabilities, that disabilities does not allow the person to concentrate properly. So definitely it acts as a barrier to effective communication. Next is language differences and the difficulty in understanding unfamiliar accent. Every person has their own way of speaking a language. Even though Hindi language is used by people in different states with a different accent, if a person is using a language which is not understood by the listeners, then it automatically hampers their understanding. Expectations and prejudices. Before going to attend any sort of lecture or to receive any kind of communication, if we have some sort of expectations from our own side, or we prejudiced with some or other way to that communication, then also while listening to that person, we may have that prejudice or expectation, and that may not be fulfilled during that communication. So it also creates barriers to the effective communication. Cultural differences. India is a diverse country having so many cultures, and these cultural differences are sometimes create barriers to communication if we are not aware of that culture. Distrust, threat, and fear. These things are also affect communication, and the person who is not having trust on the communicator or the sender, or is there any kind of threat or a fear from any side, that also create hindrance in the communication process, maybe on the side of communicator or the sender, or maybe on the part of receiver. Poorly expressed message. If the message is not described or communicated by the sender in a proper manner, then also it is not understood by receiver. So poorly expressed message is also one of the barrier in the process of effective communication. These all are the barriers to the effective communication. So while having any communication process, one should follow, or one should ensure that these barriers should not work during that process. So the communication process becomes more effective and easy, and receivers can understand whatever we want to communicate to them. Thank you.